We are ranking the top 30 running backs that are going to help you win your fantasy football league. And we'll start with the number one running back. It's Christian McCaffrey. You don't have to spend a lot of time here. He's still just 28 years old. He's not in the over-the-hill time of his career. And last year, he had over 2,000 total yards. And there has been some talk in the past about McCaffrey being injury-prone. But as you can see here, the last 2 years, he's played in 16 and 17 games. That means he's played in 33 of his last 34 games. And he's still on this great offense with a great coach in Kyle Shanahan. He's number one. Now, a debate might start after Christian McCaffrey. And my number two running back is going to be Bijan Robinson, who, look, this offseason, of course, the offense took a step forward. No matter what happened, all the crazy stuff in the draft with Michael Penix, their quarterback is still an upgrade, assuming he's healthy, in Kirk Cousins, and they picked up some wide receiver depth and guys like Darnell Mooney and Rondell Moore. Now, last year, Bijan, in his rookie year, I mean, he was great, but the issue was Arthur Smith, his former head coach, because he only got 12.6 carries, as you can see right here, which ranked 19th in the entire league, even though he was one of the more efficient, effective running backs and all-around solid players at the position. But now Arthur Smith is gone, and they have a new coach in Zach Robinson, who spent 5 years under Sean McVay with the Rams, and when they have a guy like a Todd Gurley or a Kyren Williams, they'll use that guy often. Now, Bijan was top 10 in yards per touch as a rookie, and he should only see more touches this year, which means more production. Now, next up is our running back 3, Breece Hall. It's pretty close between him and Bijan Robinson, and Breece had a great offseason. He gets a first-round tackle in the NFL draft, and a couple other offensive linemen signed in free agency. And that's important because last year, the Jets' offensive line in general was bad. I mean, that's how Aaron Rodgers got hurt, but they ranked 27th in run blocking, as you can see right here, so this is going to be hopefully an improvement for Breece Hall heading into his third season. And last year, Hall actually started off slow, but then he came on as he healed from his ACL rehab. Because from that point on, from week 5 to the rest of the season, Breece Hall averaged 20 touches per game, not opportunities, 20 touches per game, and 103 total yards per game. And that was with guys like Zach Wilson and Tim Boyle as his quarterback. So those three guys, they're my tier 1 running backs, but now let's move into tier 2. And tier 2 starts with Jonathan Taylor, who also had a quietly good offseason because he ended up signing his extension last year, so we know he's with the team, and he lost his biggest competition from last year in Zach Moss, who's now on the Cincinnati Bengals. And this effectively means that at least as of right now, Taylor's biggest competition is a second-year player in Evan Hull, who only saw 2 total touches last year in his rookie year. After that, I mean, you see like guys like Tyler Goodson, Trey Sermon. None of these guys are going to be a threatening competition. I expect they'll probably add a veteran running back at some point, but if they don't, it's full steam ahead, all of the touches for Jonathan Taylor. And he's in an offense that's about to be great. I mean, Anthony Richardson's coming back from injury. They just re-signed Michael Pittman. He's still there. We'll see what happens with the rookie wide receiver in the second round, Adonai Mitchell. This could be a really fun offense. And Taylor is still just 25 years old. He's in the prime of his career, and last year when he actually got going, he was averaging 21 touches and 100 yards per game the final 8 games of the season after missing the first 2 games, being ramped back up from being on the PUP list. So he's the running back 4. Now here's the running back 5. And that's a second-year player, Jahmyr Gibbs from the Detroit Lions. He's coming off a great rookie season where he averaged 16 touches per game, 8th in yards per touch, and he had the 3rd most breakaway runs in the entire NFL. And look, here's the thing. Despite splitting a backfield with the veteran David Montgomery, and it was a split backfield, he still saw 57, or you can call it 58% of the snaps Jahmyr Gibbs. He was still kind of always out there. They were out there together at times, so it didn't really matter if there was a veteran competing with him. If anything, this role can get better if he still steals touches for Montgomery or if Montgomery was forced to miss any time. Not to mention his offense, coach, and offensive line continue to look good heading into this year. Our number 6 running back in tier 2 still is going to be the brand new Philadelphia Eagles running back, and that's Saquon Barkley, who leaves behind a bad situation in the Giants, their overall offense, their 30th ranked offensive line for run blocking last year, and now goes to the Eagles, who are coming off of being a top 5 unit in run blocking. Now, the Eagles actually lost Jason Kelce, the center, to retirement, and a few other offensive linemen, but they still have just such great depth that it doesn't really matter all that much. And of course it matters, but it's not going to move their offensive line from like a top 5 unit to a bottom 5 unit. They'll be fine. And this is what matters right here. The fully guaranteed money for Saquon Barkley, $26 million, almost double any other running back what they got in free agency. The Eagles, who never spend money on running backs, them spending money on this running back means, yeah, they really like him. So Saquon's going to have a 3-down role, and yeah, the tush push around the end zone will steal some touchdowns, but even DeAndre Swift saw 41 red zone touches last year. Saquon will be able to do just fine. Now, my running back 7 is the running back 2 from last year, Kyren Williams, who was a beast. He was averaging 23 touches and 113 total yards per game. All of those things are absolutely fantastic, but here's my issue. Here's the one thing that's the problem. He now has new competition in Blake Corum. Last year, he saw this massive opportunity share and overall snap share because they just didn't trust anybody else, but now they might actually trust Blake Corum, the 3rd-round rookie. Because in 2023, the only other options to compete with one Kyren Williams were Zach Evans and Ronnie Rivers, who just Sean McVay clearly did not trust a lick. So if Corum, who was one of the best running backs we've seen in college football each of the last 3 years as a pure rusher, even if he only sees 30 to 35% of the snaps, that's going to drop down Kyren Williams, who was seeing an 85% snap share last year, enough to make him our number 7 back. And now for our number 8 running back, this is just a guy who's had a steady offseason. Like, nothing crazy so far has happened for him. He's one of the few guys who have had that relatively quiet offseason, and maybe quiet is a good thing. Because as of right now, there was a running back taken in the NFL draft by the Jacksonville Jaguars, and it was Keelan Robinson out of Texas, who was actually a backup backup, didn't really see a lot of touches, and people are speculating that, okay, maybe he'll see some running back snaps, but for the most part, maybe they got him because of these new kickoff rules. He's great in that dimension. Other than that, it's Tank Bigsby, who didn't have a big role last year. Now, the only negatives that you can say for Travis Etienne this offseason is that Doug Peterson, not once, but twice, has stated that they want to lessen Travis Etienne's workload to avoid injury, most likely, and give more touches to the second-year back in Tank Bigsby. And honestly, even if they lessen his workload, that's fine. The guy was averaging 19 touches per game last year. Even if he goes down to 16 or 17, he could still be a top 10 running back. Jahmyr Gibbs just did it last year, averaging 16 touches per game, finishing as the RB8 overall. Now, tier 2 is big. I know we've already talked about a bunch of guys, but there's still some more. Which takes us to our running back 9, Josh Jacobs, the brand new Green Bay Packer who just signed a 4-year deal. But the Packers, if they really wanted to, could get out of it after next year for just a 1-year deal. Now, Jacobs is coming off of a down year, but check this out right here according to Player Profile. The average defenders in the box, he was seeing 7.2 on average defenders in the box, by far number 1 in football. Saw the 4th most stacked front carry rates as well. So he's just seeing loaded boxes because nobody cared that Aiden O'Connell or Brian Hoyer was the quarterback last year. They weren't scared of those guys like they will be this year for Jordan Love and the Packers. Now, the one concern for Josh Jacobs heading into this year would be this. It's his competition. And no, I'm not concerned with A.J. Dillon. I mean, the guy only signed for like $2 million, potential cut candidate. Didn't really do much last year. Hasn't really been a threat. But they did draft Marshawn Lloyd in the 3rd round. Significant draft capital. And Marshawn Lloyd is a 220-plus pound running back. That is a threatening guy who runs in the 4.4s. He has a ton of size and speed. He breaks tackles. The one thing he does do is fumble, but if that changes, he could be a real threat to Josh Jacobs. And head coach Matt LaFleur of the Green Bay Packers has already basically come out and said that he loves the fact that Marshawn Lloyd can pass protect, so maybe that gets him on the field immediately. That's kind of what got Kyren Williams on the field a lot more in his breakout year last year. So this is a somewhat threat, nothing major. Now, this next man up might be one of my favorite sleeper picks in some fantasy drafts, depending on where he ends up going, because he's my running back 10. I'm a little bit higher on him than the market right now, and that's Isaiah Pacheco, who is one of the best winners of this entire offseason because the Chiefs did not draft a running back. They didn't add a significant running back in free agency either. As of right now, the competition is similar to what it was last season. You're going to have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who's not listed right here, an undrafted free agent in Hassan Hall, and Michael Pirine is there, but Jerick McKinnon is gone, which means maybe even more pass-catching upside for one Isaiah Pacheco. And Pacheco already averaged 18 touches per game last year, and last time I checked, yeah, Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid are still on this dude's team. My number 11 player is going to be Rachaad White, one of the best running backs in all of fantasy football, had one of the best roles, seeing over 330 touches last year, but what will he do this year? Well, in the offseason, another quiet offseason. He actually gets a first-round tackle in Graham Barton, a very versatile center, actually, who can play all the positions, and that upgrades the offensive line, which matters because the Bucs offensive line for run blocking last year ranked 29th in the league. They could use improvement. Now, I will say that Rachaad White did get some more competition this offseason. You can see right here, Bucky Irvin was actually drafted in the 4th round of the NFL draft, so day 3. It's not the most insane draft capital, but it somewhat matters here, and Bucky Irving is a guy who is highly productive in college, but I will tell you, he's only 192 pounds and slow for his size. People will say, oh, he's not slow. I watched him in college. No, he ran a 4.55 40 time at 192 pounds. That is very slow. And of course, we've seen some exceptions in the past, like a Kyren Williams, who was only 195 pounds. He was the slower running back, but he could pass protect at an elite level, which Bucky Irvin can't. So it's really hard for Irving to get on the field and stay on the field. Now, in 2023, Rachaad White ranked 4th in running back receptions and 2nd in carries in this class. The dude had an elite role. The only knock against him is the fact that he did lose his coach this offseason. And we are finally done with that massive tier 2. Let's go into tier 3 now with the first running back. My running back 12 is going to be James Cook from the Buffalo Bills, one of the most efficient running backs in all of football last year, averaging 5.6 yards per touch, and the dude got even stronger during the playoffs, averaging 22 touches a game in the postseason. The dude's upside is underrated. I mean, he had like a 5 or 6 week stretch last year where he was going over 100 total yards every single game despite being undersized, and he still even earned nearly 40 red zone touches. His main competition, and there is some competition, Ty Johnson, the veteran, was efficient to close out the year. He had an actual role with the Bills. I think he'll somewhat be involved. And then you get the running back in Ray Davis, a 4th round running back who does have a little bit more size, can also catch passes. Maybe he inherits some of the red zone touches behind James Cook that like Latavius Murray and Damian Harris were seeing last year. But either way, Cook remains a dynamic running back in what is a good offense. He's a top 12 back. Running back 13 in tier 3 is Devon Achane, and I'm a lot lower. I've seen Devon Achane ranked in the top 10. I've seen him be borderline a top 5 back, and based on this offseason, I just really can't do it. I mean, they re-signed Raheem Mostert to a 2-year deal, giving him $9 million. And then this is the Dolphins draft, because in round 4, they take Jalen Wright out of Tennessee, and Jalen Wright is a fast running back, runs in the 4.3s, but he's also a big running back, 210 pounds, which they currently don't have on the roster. Now look, Achane is still a huge piece of this offense. I don't think he's getting his job taken. The dude averaged 7.7 yards per touch, by far number 1 in the NFL, the highest I've ever seen for a full season of a running back. But the fact that Raheem Mostert is there, Jalen Wright was just drafted, heck, you even still have Jeff Wilson as of right now. We'll see if he gets traded or cut. The fact that there's all this competition for Devon Achane means that his overall touches aren't going to go up. He was seeing like 12 touches per game last year. It's probably going to stay around there. And that's why he's dropped down my rankings this offseason, and this next guy has only climbed. And that's my running back 14, Derrick Henry, who might actually move into the top 12 pretty soon because I love this landing spot with the Baltimore Ravens, who had a top 5 rush offense last season. Look, this is a big upgrade, obviously, overall offense, but also the backfield right now. His biggest competition is Keaton Mitchell, who last year, Keaton Mitchell goes out there and tears his ACL late in the season in week 14 and might not actually be healthy for a guy who relies on being dynamic and explosive, and Keaton Mitchell might not be healthy until like the midway point of the season. And you might be worried about Lamar Jackson stealing touchdowns from Derrick Henry, but Lamar only had 5 carries inside the 5-yard line last year. They were giving all those touches to guys like Gus Edwards, who ended up with 13 touchdowns. That could be Derrick Henry and then some this year. Next up, the number 15 running back, it's Joe Mixon, the brand new Houston Texans. He got traded there, and then he ended up signing a 3-year deal that had $13 million in guaranteed, so they're committed to Mixon. And look, he's definitely going to be their guy, because as of right now, they drafted a rookie in Jawar Jordan. I'm not concerned about that, but the only other competition is Dameon Pierce, who Dameon Pierce last season averaged like 2.8 yards per carry. He got beaten out by Devin Singletary, and in my opinion, Mixon is a better all-around running back than Singletary. This is his backfield. So this backfield gets an upgrade in Mixon, who is a physical runner. He can catch passes. He succeeds in the red zone as well. He's a real, true 3-down back that you want in fantasy, and you get him at a somewhat cheaper price point. And people will talk about his efficiency dropping over the past few seasons, but when you're seeing 15 to 20 plus touches a game like you should see this year, it really just doesn't matter at that point. Now, my number 16 running back is going to be Alvin Kamara, and look, he benefited because this offseason, no running back was drafted to the Saints, and they only took a first-round tackle helping their offensive line. And a lot of people forget this about Alvin Kamara, but he just had a really good 2023. He finished as a top 3 running back in fantasy football, and when I say really good, I mean based on fantasy. The dude caught 75 balls in his first year with Derek Carr. Derek Carr loved checking down to Kamara, over 6 targets per game for Kamara, and now he has the same competition as last year in Kendry Miller, a second-year player, and the veteran Jamal Williams. And now look, the Saints didn't draft a running back. These are their draft picks. You can see they took that first-round tackle in Fuaga out of Oregon State, but not only that, they didn't add any other key pieces in free agency. Cedric Wilson, a wide receiver, okay, but even in the draft, 5th-round pick, Bub Memes out of Pittsburgh was like the only guy that they added to the wide receiver room this offseason besides Cedric Wilson, which means the overall target competition isn't going to be much for Alvin Kamara. He should continue to be great. So tier 1, 2, and 3 are now complete. Let's move on to tier 4. And to kick off tier 4 is our number 17 running back, Kenneth Walker, who in his second year, he put up similar rushing numbers to his rookie year, which means it was pretty good. If anything, he actually got more efficient as a receiver. He ranked 3rd in broken tackles and averaged 4.7 yards per touch in 2023. And he does still have some pretty good competition back here in Zach Charbonnet, who as a rookie averaged 4.8 yards per touch, but in the games when Kenneth Walker was actually healthy, not the 2 that he missed or the 1 that he left early, Zach Charbonnet never actually had over 9 carries in a game. Never saw double-digit carries in a game. This is still Kenneth Walker's backfield, in my opinion, with a pretty clear bullet. Now, it is worth pointing out that this Seattle team did lose some pieces on their offensive line, so that's going to be important that they replace them. Now, the big one was the guard Damian Lewis, who went to the Panthers. They also lost their center in Evan Brown. They signed some players, drafted some players later in the draft to try and replace these guys, but we'll see. There might be a downgrade in the offensive line this year for Seattle. Now, for my number 18 running back still in tier 4, and it's Ramondre Stevenson, who, look, he struggled last year. He finishes just a running back 27 after being taken in the 3rd and 4th round by a lot of people. He became less efficient as a runner. He saw less overall targets and receptions. Ezekiel Elliott was stealing touches from him, and the offense sucked. The Patriots were 29th in total offense last year. And we shouldn't ignore the injuries. He had a thigh bruise, an ankle sprain, and then a high ankle sprain, which effectively ended his season, and the offensive environment was pretty bad. No standout wide receivers and a bunch of quarterbacks that weren't great. The hope is that with a new rookie quarterback and 2 rookie receivers coming in, that could change. Now, Ramondre no longer has Zeke in the backfield, but he does have a quality running back in Antonio Gibson, who's a great pass catcher, former wide receiver in college, but he's not really a guy who's going to steal red zone touches or short yardage usage. Ramondre is still a running back 1 here, in my opinion. Now, my number 19 running back is Najee Harris from the Pittsburgh Steelers, and this guy had a quality offseason. Because as you can see right here, this is the Steelers draft. They didn't take a running back with any of their picks. They had 7 picks, no running backs, and look at this. Their first pick was an offensive guard, a first-round guard. Their second pick was a center in Zach Frazier. That's going to be lovely for their offensive line improvement. Now, last season, Najee was less efficient, but he earned enough touches to still put up over 1,200 total yards, and he actually ranked 12th in broken tackles and 4th in breakaway yards, so there was still some explosiveness there. Now, it is worth noting the Steelers didn't pick up his 5th-year option, so this is a contract year for Najee, which means maybe some more added motivation. Our RB20 is just a steady veteran at this point, and it's going to be David Montgomery with the Detroit Lions, who, look, he did exactly what we wanted him to last year. Get a lot of red zone opportunities, the 5th most in the league, score a lot of touchdowns. He had 13. And even though his competition in the backfield, Jahmyr Gibbs, came on later last season and earned the pass down role and a lot more touches, David Montgomery was still seeing work. I mean, it's not like he just disappeared. He earned 15 or more touches in the 10 out of the 14 games that he played in, and he left 2 of those games early, so 10 out of the 12 healthy games, he was seeing at least 15 touches. So expect another solid season from Montgomery, and he only has top 10 running back upside if Jahmyr Gibbs was to miss time. Our running back 21 as we stay in tier 4 is Zamir White, who had a quality offseason. There is no longer going to be J.K. Dobbins with the Raiders. Instead, there's not much competition. All they added was a 6th-round running back. That's all they added in the draft. They did add Alexander Mattison in free agency, but their own head coach described Mattison as a depth piece, being this is a guy who struggled on the Vikings last year. Zamir White, though, he didn't struggle when he got the role last season with the Raiders. Raiders. White started the final 4 games of the season in 2023 with Josh Jacobs injured, and he averaged 21 carries per game, 114 total yards per game, and 15.2 fantasy points per game. The takeaway is that he was a top 20 running back all 4 weeks in fantasy. Our running back 22 in tier 4, which is now our second biggest tier behind only tier 2, is going to be Aaron Jones. The brand new Minnesota Vikings goes to the rival from the Packers after they cut him to the Vikings, and this is a guy who is still explosive when healthy, averaging 5.2 yards per touch last season. But the issue is he's now 29 years old. He dealt with multiple injuries last year, and he actually has a much better backup. This is not A.J. Dillon, who is just a plotter and really can't explode. It's Ty Chandler, who was highly explosive in his rookie year last year and is going to actually be a threat to touches for Aaron Jones. Now, I do expect Aaron Jones to still be the running back 1, but I don't expect a 20-plus touches a game he was seeing like the final 5 or 6 weeks of the year last year when he was with the Packers. And now, before we get into the final 7 running backs in tier 5 and 6 in this video, I just want to plug the Fantasy Blueprint. It basically has everything you need to win your fantasy league, and here's the deal. If you don't end up making your fantasy playoffs, you just follow these 2 simple steps to get the blueprint. If you don't make your fantasy playoffs, so you'll get this all year long, it's risk-free. I'll just give you your $10 back. So it's just $10. It's like a deposit. You don't make your fantasy playoffs, you get that $10 right back in December. So you get this for that entire time, like less than $1 a month. Last year, we had over 1,000 people sign up for the Fantasy Blueprint, and only 3 people reached out for a refund. So a lot of people were making their fantasy playoffs. To get your blueprint today and take advantage of this exclusive offer, you can just scan the QR code on the screen or click the link in the description below. Now we start off tier 5 with our running back 23, and that is going to be one DeAndre Swift, the brand new Chicago Bears running back who signed a 3-year deal with $14 million in guaranteed money, the second most guaranteed money for running back this offseason, and the first running back signed in free agency. Now, the interesting thing is that he does not come to a clean backfield. You have second-year player, great pass protector and pass catcher in Roshan Johnson there. You have Khalil Herbert, who is an efficient runner on the ground, and then you have DeAndre Swift. So it's not like this is just a walk in the park. Now, there's a chance that Herbert is traded away. I'm not too sure if that happens or not, but if that does happen, of course, it opens up a lot more for DeAndre Swift. And Swift is still just 25 years old. He's still in his prime. He just came off the healthiest season of his career, playing in 16 games, and he averaged 4.7 yards per touch. This is all solid. The real question becomes now, what does he look like when he's not behind that elite Eagles offensive line and great offense that they have? That's what we're going to have to find out. But for now, we move to our running back 24, and it's Jaylen Warren out of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and we can say a lot of the same that we talked about with Najee Harris. There was no running backs added here, and they only improved their offensive line in the draft. Now, the narrative is basically the same here. You get Jaylen Warren, who's just been this guy behind Najee Harris, even though he's more explosive and dynamic running back. And he was great last season. I mean, look at his stats. 7th in yards per touch, averaging 5.5 yards per touch. Number 1 in juke rate, so he was highly elusive, and he broke the 5th most tackles. He's a top 24 running back, and if anything happens to Najee Harris on a week in and week out basis, he then has that upside to be a top 10 back. Our running back 25 is another veteran, a new running back in a new landing spot. That was kind of the narrative of this offseason. It is Zach Wilson, who is now the Cincinnati Bengals running back after signing a 2-year deal, and he's going to be in a similar offense to the Colts, where he'll be used in shotgun pretty much often. Now, your only concern with Zach Moss is he didn't get a ton of guaranteed money, so it's not like this backfield is his because they're paying him so much. It's going to have to be based on merit, and Chase Brown, the second-year player here, was really good, averaging 5.6 yards per touch in his rookie year. He could actually steal some work away from Zach Moss. Now, another sneaky benefit for both of these guys, but obviously Zach Moss, since he's a top 25 back for me, is that they did take a first-round run-blocking tackle in Amarius Mims, who is an absolute beast, will help the offensive line. Now, the number 26 running back is Javonte Williams, who kind of is just in this weird spot because last season he had to come back from that ACL, LCL, PCL, or PLC injury, and he only ranked 53rd in yards per touch, wasn't all that efficient. Now, the hope is that he's fully healthy, but the offensive situation doesn't look all that great still. I mean, Bo Nix is like the number 6 quarterback in the draft. Maybe he's good, maybe he's not, who knows? That crowded running back room here of Samaje Perine, Jaleel McLaughlin, they draft Audric Estime out of Notre Dame, and then you go down to the wide receiver room, and there's some solid receivers here, but no like standout number 1s. Cortland Sutton, Marvin Mims, Josh Reynolds, Troy Franklin. A lot of these guys are just like deep threat intermediate passers, which is kind of sketchy when you have Bo Nix as your quarterback, not known for throwing deep. Now, on the bright side for Javonte Williams, we did see that explosiveness come out last year. He was top 10 in breakaway runs, but he's not really a part of this Sean Payton offense. Like, this isn't the guy that Sean Payton wants in the backfield. He's not the one who drafted him. So I know I'm saying a lot of negative things, but this is exactly why I have Javonte Williams outside the top 24 running backs when I've seen some people have him inside them. Now, our final player in tier 5 as we head into tier 6 is going to be the rookie Jonathan Brooks, the Carolina Panthers' new running back after they traded up in the NFL draft. They gave away 2 fifth-round draft picks who end up taking him in round 2. And look, this dude just has everything to succeed in the NFL. The size, the vision, the pass blocking ability, and the pass catching ability. And the only reason he's not going higher in my rankings or even maybe in the NFL draft is because he had an ACL surgery in November last year, so he's not going to be ready till like August most likely, which means he might be ramped up for the first 4 to 6 weeks to start the year. But once he's healthy, it really shouldn't be a concern for him in this backfield. Miles Sanders already lost his job last year. Chuba Hubbard will be definitely a formidable opponent, a very fast running back who has been efficient at times in his NFL career, but for the most part, Jonathan Brooks stands out as a better pass protecting and maybe even better pass catching RB. And with that, we move on to tier 6 with my running back 28, and that is going to be another running back on a new team, the running back for the New York Giants, Devin Singletary, who signed this offseason. He got nearly $10 million guaranteed, a large chunk of money to be reunited with his head coach from the Bills and Brian Dable. Now, Singletary is coming off of 3 straight seasons of 1,000+ total yards, and right now he doesn't have all that much competition with the Giants. Because as you can see right here on Player Profiler, I mean, you have guys like Eric Gray, who were drafted last year, only 17 career carries. But Gary Brightwell, been on the team a few years now, might get cut, only 41 career carries. And the biggest competition might actually be a 5th-round pick in Tyron Tracy, who I think is dynamic, explosive, and appealing. But again, he's still a 5th-round pick. So expect that to be Devin Singletary's backfield for the time being with the Giants. Now for my running back 29. And that's going to be Tony Pollard, who I've seen be a lot higher on a lot of people's lists, but I'm just concerned about this landing spot for him. The quarterback situation with Will Levis is sketchy, and Pollard struggled on a larger workload last season. And based on the comments that we've gotten multiple times this offseason out of new head coach Brian Callahan, he wants to basically split the roles between Tajay Spears and Tony Pollard. He sees them as interchangeable pieces. And look, Tajay Spears is no slouch as running back competition goes. As a rookie, this dude was 6th in yards per touch, averaging 5.5 yards every time he touched the ball, and was taking significant snaps away from even Derrick Henry last year. So I'm a little bit concerned for Tony Pollard. Maybe it was just the injury last year, or maybe that's just what we're going to get out of him now as an older back. And for my running back 30 to finish off this video, it's going to be Raheem Mostert with the Miami Dolphins. He signed a 2-year extension this offseason, and last year the dude had 21 touchdowns, over 1,200 yards. Yeah, he's 32 now, but speed just does not age the same way. Despite being 32, he was still 4th in breakaway runs last year and 12th in broken tackles. So these are the top 30 running backs ranked for fantasy football. Let me know what you think in the comments. We'll have the wide receivers and overall rankings next week. But for right now, if you want to actually see the guys who are the most overlooked players in the NFL draft who are going to benefit in fantasy football, you can check out this video right here.